Yeah, I think this thing is lagging a little bit, and I rebooted the computer and tried everything. I'm trying out, and I got this new lapel mic today. It's a wired lapel mic because I can't ever get the frickin' Bluetooth on my computer to work. It's a piece of crap. It's a dinosaur. I need to get me a new one of these days, but it's going to be a while, I think. But anyway, I figured I'd try out this lapel mic, and it keeps giving me this notification, which I keep getting rid of. Oh, anyway, it's what time is it? It is about 20 to 6. I just got through eating dinner. I eat dinner early usually. So anyway, I'll try to stop rambling. Ah. Anyway, no football on tonight. I feel lost. I'm used to football being on like almost every night this last week. Um, Ironically enough, I'm trying out a couple new things. I'm trying out this lapel mic, which seems to work half the time. Half the time I plug it in, it doesn't work. It seems to be working now. Hopefully, I hope I don't do this entire video and find out it's not working again. I mean, I paid a whole $17 for it. I mean, come on. I just wanted to get one to try out so I don't I can put the camera a little bit further away. And what was my other reason? Put the camera further away and put the camera further away. And plus, some people don't like that glowing light at night when I record these because UPS didn't deliver this until like an hour ago. So it was supposed to be delivered between 11:15 and 1:15. Yeah, right. Every once in a while they deliver it by 1:30 or 2 and they say that, but most of the time it's like 5, 6, 7 o'clock. So anyway, what I want to talk about tonight is just I guess if you like football, you'll like this because that's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm not going to be talking about any true crime or anything like that tonight, other than this true crime that UPS and FedEx are still in business, but it's not really relevant. It is to me, but not to you guys. But I wanted to talk about just the craziness of some of the football cities. I just found this, I got to thinking about this a while back, and I got to thinking about how, oh yeah, that's right, I sidetracked myself. I've also got a new editing program I'm going to try out that's open source, and it's Ken Liver or something like that. Something like that. But it's an open source, and I was making some videos earlier, just like some little short, quickie ones, just trying it out and seeing how it worked. And it seemed to work just as good as the one that I'm paying $75 for. And that's been using the Cyberlink 365. So I'm going to try to save myself $75. And I'm also going to get rid of StreamYard because with my hotspot I can't stream worth of crap, so that's a waste of time. So that's another $25. I'm going to have an extra $100 this month, which I really need, because the heat bills are astronomical this last month. So anyway, enough whining. Anyway, to keep losing, I'm tired if you can't tell. That's why I don't ever make videos at night most of the time. But I'll try to make as much sense as I can. One of the things that has just intrigued me is the way that these owners of these football teams will almost hold the city captive and, saying, hey, we need a new stadium. Well, then the city basically tells them to go piss off, We ain't building it for you. They take the team, move somewhere else, and then a couple of years later, they build a new stadium for another team, which they could have built 2 years before or 5 years before or whatever, and kept their original team there. It just freaking amazes me. I've got a list here. I've tried to put it in chronological order. You got two teams that are kind of like different, how do you put it, different category, even though they moved, and that was which originally was the Los Angeles Chargers, and they moved to San Diego in 1961, and were the San Diego Chargers from 1961 to, hang on just a second, from 1961 to 20, I've got wires, this has got a 23-foot wire on it, and it gets wrapped around everything, and I can't, hang on a second. Urgh! Stop it. I may regret getting that, but anyway, 2017 they moved back and became the LA Chargers again. Another team that was in LA was actually they originally were in Oakland. That was the Oakland Raiders. And then in 1982 they moved from Oakland to Los Angeles and were the LA Raiders. All right, and then they moved back to, where's my notes here? I thought I had it in here. When they moved back to Oakland. I don't know. I thought I had it in my notes here. Anyway, they moved back to Oakland in 1995. All right, I put it in the wrong place there. Plus, I'm reading this from a ways away on my screen here in Notepad. Anyway, in 1995, they moved back to Oakland. All right, we thought that's where they were going to stay. Well, then they tried to get another stadium built, and that didn't happen. They ended up building them this really nice brand new stadium in Las Vegas. So in 2021, they moved from Oakland, left Oakland, and moved to Las Vegas. All right, so those are kind of like a different category, simply because they didn't, let a team go and then build another stadium there. But now we're going to talk about, and this is just crazy, the way these things happen. In fact, I was texting, or not texting, but messaging back and forth with somebody today who is in Baltimore. All right, well, those of you who as old as me remember the Baltimore Colts and Johnny Unitas and all the players, from that era. They were the Baltimore Colts for years and years and years and years and years. Well, then, in 1984, the Ursays decided that they were going to move the Baltimore Colts from Baltimore to Indianapolis. So, here we went from the Baltimore Colts. They snuck out in the middle of the night, loaded up their trailers, put all their equipment and all that crap in their semi-trucks and head on down the road to Indianapolis. Snuck out in the middle of the night. Chickens. Couldn't face the public. They just snuck out of town. So then that was in 1984. The interesting thing is, 12 years later, what they wouldn't do for the Colts, they did and stole another team from another town, which was the Baltimore Ravens, which we'll see that here in a minute. All right, so that was in 1984. Well, 4 years later, in 1988, There used to be, those of you who are as old as me remember, there used to be a St. Louis Cardinals baseball team and a St. Louis Cardinals football team. They used to be the Chicago Cardinals originally. Well, actually, I think they were something else before that, but they were the Chicago Cardinals. And they relocated from Chicago to St. Louis and became the St. Louis Cardinals. Well, then, in 1988, the St. Louis Cardinals left town and went to Phoenix and became the Phoenix Cardinals. And then later the Arizona Cardinals. I can't remember, they might have changed it the next year or a couple of years later, but they originally were the Phoenix Cardinals. And then they became the Arizona Cardinals. So, there we go. Not going to build a new stadium in Baltimore. Not going to build a new stadium in St. Louis. So, 7 years later, in 1995, St. Louis built a new stadium, and they stole the Rams from Los Angeles. So Los Angeles moved from, or the Rams moved from Los Angeles to St. Louis. They wouldn't build a new stadium for the Cardinals, but they got tired of not having a football team. So they ended up building the stadium and stole the Rams. And the Rams went to St. Louis, which I never liked. I could just never, me growing up, it was always the Los Angeles Rams. And to be honest with you, sorry if you live in the St. Louis area, but I am so very glad that they are the Los Angeles Rams once again, because that's what I grew up with. I could never get used to calling them the St. Louis Rams. It just was not, it just didn't. It's kind of like I'll never get used to be calling the Raiders the Las Vegas Raiders, because I don't really care. I hate the Raiders, but I can't get you. I'm never going to get used to. I'm always going to be calling them Oakland, even when they moved to L.A. My best friend and I, and everybody that grew up with them being in Oakland, you know, remember the old Oakland Raider, Pittsburgh Steelers rivalries and stuff. They're always to us the Oakland Raiders. It just, you know, I even hear people on TV still calling them Oakland, even though they've been this their second year in Las Vegas. All right, so in 1995, the Rams moved to St. Louis, and the L.A. Raiders moved back to Oakland. I read this quote. It said, last year, the NFL and Kroenke, Stan Kroenke, he's the owner of the Rams, reached the $790 million settlement with the St. Louis interest group over the relocation. According to ESPN, the settlement does not include a promise from the NFL to grant St. Louis an expansion franchise in the future. It was on April 29th, 2022. All right, so St. Louis stole the Rams from LA, and they kind of come back to bite them in the butt, because now they've got a not a brand new stadium, but 20-some-year-old stadium that they ain't got nobody to play in, and it doesn't look like they're going to have any time in the future. All right, so then 1996. And I was living in Seattle at the time, so I remember this very, very well. Ken Behring, who was the owner of the Seahawks, decided he was going to move the Seahawks from Seattle to Los Angeles, because at that particular time, LA no longer had a football team. You know, at one time they had 3, but now none. Well, now they have 2, but in 1996 they didn't have any. So Ken Behring, he was going to move the Seahawks to Southern California. All right, they already moved all their crap down there. He took all the equipment, basically did the same thing that the Colts did, snuck away in the middle of the night, put all the Seahawks equipment and had it down in their facility. LA had promised they were going to build them a new stadium, blah, 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 which never happened. Well, anyway, the Seattle area was very up in arms about it. And here's one thing that bugs me about it, is they actually put it to a vote. At that particular time, we played in the Kingdome, which, to me, I loved the Kingdome. I didn't see any need to build any new stadiums. I still, even after, I never did go to the new Seahawks stadium. I moved from there before that was completed. They just had the framework up when I was still there. But I did go to a few games at Safeco. Well, at the time it was called Safeco Field, the new Mariners Stadium. And I didn't like it nearly as well as the Kingdome. You know, the Kingdome just had a certain ambiance that just you couldn't beat. You know, and it was loud. I remember the first time I walked in there, it was a Seahawks and Colts, I think it was. It was a preseason game. And I remember first time I walked in there, started walking down to our seats. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I mean, I loved the Kingdome. I hated to see them blow it up. To me, it was a total waste of money. Total waste of money. There was nothing wrong with it. Well, you could have some kind of bad seats when you were watching baseball games, especially if you were back behind like left field. You couldn't see down if somebody caught the ball and they were up close to the wall. But anyway, so Ken Behring, he had everything and moved everything down there. So everybody, and then they held a vote to build a new stadium in Seattle. All right. Well, it didn't pass. The voters voted it down. And this is why, some of you are going to hate me for saying this. This is why I don't any longer vote. Because I learned a long time ago, my vote doesn't mean shite. It doesn't. So anyway, this is one example. The voters voted it down big time. I mean, it was a landslide vote. They voted down the new stadium. And I can't remember the guy, Gary something, he'd been the King County executive and he'd become governor. He was a shyster as far as I'm concerned. I can't remember his last name. I don't remember his first name was Gary. And well, anyway, they held called a special session of the legislature. All right, the voters, keep in mind, the voters had voted this down. They had voted down the new stadium. And they held a special session of Senate or legislature or whatever. I don't like politics. I don't know the difference. So whoever the hell it was that they called together, a bunch of politicians. Anyway, they ended up passing this initiative to build this new stadium, even though the voters had voted it down. And there were a lot of pissed off people. Let me tell you. They voted it down by, God, I can't remember, it was like 65% no. I may be wrong on that, but it was a lot. It was quite a percentage, heavy percentage of no votes voted it down, and they went ahead, bypassed the voters, and passed it anyway. And there were a lot of pissed off people. Well, then there was a certain groups of people that went to Paul Allen, who, of course, the area billionaire, him and Bill Gates, the area billionaires, went to Paul Allen and asked him to buy the Seahawks from Ken Behring, which if I remember right, he also owned the Portland Trail Blazers basketball team. He already owned them. And so they went to him, asked him to also buy the Seahawks. Well, he ended up offering Ken Behring a very good chunk of change for the Seahawks. So next thing you know, had the trucks coming back from L.A. with all the Seahawks equipment, plus all the new equipment that Paul Allen bought for him. So as a result of that, and I'm glad to see the Seahawks stay in Seattle and not go down to L.A. You know, they're a Northwest team. You know, they're the only team that we have up here. You know, as far as we have one basketball team. Well, actually, we had well, no, that's right. Seattle's not there anymore. They're in Oklahoma City now. So yeah, I guess we still have one basketball team and one football team, pro. So anyway, Seahawks ended up staying in Seattle. Well, also in that same year, 1996, Art Modell, who was the owner of the Cleveland Browns, and this one pissed me off worse, honestly, worse than Seattle. Just because Seattle didn't start till like 1976, I think it was. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was 1976. It was after I was out of high school. And so Seahawks hadn't been around nearly as long. The Cleveland Browns have been, they've got a deep, deep history in the NFL. And you just don't want to see a team like that that's been around for decades and decades, had been NFL champions, had some of those famous players in history, Otto Graham, Jim Brown. There's a bunch of others, but those are the two that come to mind right off the bat. They had a deep history, and to see Cleveland leave, but they wouldn't build Art Modell a new stadium. Well, Baltimore wouldn't build the Colts a new stadium. But they built a new stadium for the Cleveland Browns and stole them from Cleveland, just like St. Louis stole the Rams from L.A. And so the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore. Art Modell told the Cleveland people that they could keep all the records, they could keep all the history. They would not take any of that with them. It would be just like they were a brand new expansion team in Baltimore. But if you want to be technical about it, Cleveland did win a Super Bowl because it was the Cleveland Brown players that after they became the Baltimore Ravens that won a Super Bowl. Like Ray Lewis, he was the middle linebacker. He was drafted by Cleveland. And they moved to Baltimore, became the Baltimore Ravens. They won a Super Bowl. So technically, Cleveland did win a Super Bowl. Or at least their players did. But no, Cleveland wouldn't build a stadium. So, Baltimore wouldn't build a stadium for the Colts. But they built one for the Ravens. Cleveland wouldn't build one for the Browns. So Art Modell took them to Baltimore. Well, guess what happened a couple of years later? Cleveland built a stadium, and as a result of that, they were granted an expansion team, which was the Cleveland Browns. Same old Browns, same uniform, same everything. It's just starting over with a brand new expansion team roster, so they weren't very good for a while. They had a really good team. They were always in the thick of it. I've got a lot of old games on tape, back when Cleveland and Denver were slugging it out, and Cleveland and Pittsburgh, and then they had to start over from scratch because of a greedy owner. All right, so then the next year in 1997, Houston would not build the Oilers a new stadium. So the owners of the Oilers said, fine, then we're leaving. And they ended up going to Nashville. And went from being the Houston Oilers to the Tennessee Titans, which have the ugliest frickin' uniforms in the NFL. I hate their uniforms. And that picture there is when they had the white helmets, which I actually liked better. And the Houston Oilers had the white helmets, but then they also wore the blue once in a while. Same logo and everything, but they wore the powder blue. Love you blue. Remember everybody used to hold up those signs in Houston. Love you blue. Houston Oilers, Houston Oilers. I used to like the Oilers, man. Earl Campbell and Dan Pastorini, and that's only two. There was another guy too, 82. I can't remember his name though. He was a receiver. It was pretty good, but I don't really remember anybody else. There was a couple of, what was that one guy's name? Really good. Bethea. It was Elvin Bethea or Larry Bethea, something like that. He was a Pro Bowl defensive player for them. But I hated to see the Oilers going to Tennessee, you know. And so technically the Houston Oilers ended up making the Super Bowl because Tennessee Titans in 2000 went to the Super Bowl and lost to the Rams. It came within about that far from scoring a touchdown and tying it up. But ended up losing to the Rams and Kurt Warner and the greatest show on turf. So anyway, I guess my advice is, I highly doubt I'm going to be talking to anybody in this video that has the money to build a stadium. But let's say that you win like the $1 billion lottery or something like that, and you decided that you want to own a football team and that you want to build a stadium, and then the team threatens to leave unless you build a stadium, just go ahead and build it. Because from everybody's track record, all these teams that did that, they ended up building it anyway. And at least all of them are filled except for St. Louis's. St. Louis is stuck with a nice stadium, but it's an empty stadium. And they may hold some college games there. As far as I know, it's still being used. I mean, it's not that old, but that was not a good move. Although they did make $790 million off the deal. But, you know, I'm still glad to see the Rams back in LA, though. You know, I'm not a huge Rams fan. I'm a Packer fan and Seahawk fan. You know, and I'm really hoping my Packers can win next week and make it to the play. Because if they win, if they beat Detroit this next coming weekend, they're in the playoffs. I'm not sure if they'll do anything once they're in there, depending on who they play. But I'm hoping they play Minnesota again the first game, because they kicked the crap out of them the other night, as did the Cowboys. So yeah, Minnesota has a pretty good record, but I don't think they're going to do much. You know, I don't think, actually, to be honest with you, I don't think them or the Packers are going to do a whole lot. Maybe not the Cowboys either, or the Giants. Now, I think it's going to be between San Francisco and, God, I can't even think of the other team. San Francisco, in Philadelphia. If their quarterback gets healthy. If not, I don't think the Eagles are going to go very far without their starting quarterback. But anyway, if you're still watching this, which if you're an old football fan or a trivia fan, something like that, hopefully you enjoyed it. Now I'm going to try putting this with my new editing program and see if it turns out as well as it does with my Cyberlink program. So, and that's what this video is about tonight. I'm just felt like doing a little bit of football, a little bit of trivia, trying out some new stuff, trying out my new mic, trying out my new program, and just seeing how it all works out. So, what is it? It's just after 6 o'clock. Well, excuse me. I ate dinner not too long ago, so it's like my body likes to give me fits after I eat sometimes. So anyway, I was going to say something else, but I don't remember what it was. Probably not that important for me if I can remember what I was going to say. So anyway, I'm going to get to editing this so I can get it uploaded tonight. And I hope somebody, maybe one or two people might enjoy this. Some of you that maybe lived in one of those football cities. I know one of the gals I was talking with lives in Baltimore. And she's, like me, she's still mad at the Colts. She said she's getting used to the Ravens, but nah, it ain't the Colts. It ain't the Baltimore Colts. I've never been able Indianapolis Colts. That just does not. Just like St. Louis Rams. That does not compute. You know, it took me a long time to get used to Arizona Cardinals, you know, too. But because I remember them being St. Louis Cardinals all the time growing up. I remember seeing the old Busch Stadium from the St. Louis Arch when we went there. I think it was right before my senior year. We went on a trip, and I remember I've got a picture that I took with my old black and white camera that I took of Busch Stadium from one of the windows up in the St. Louis Arch. I got a funny St. Louis Arch story, too, that I'm not going to tell right now. In fact, I don't know if I should tell it or not, because... anyway, not tonight. Not tonight, baby. All righty. I can find my cursor here. There we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get this edited and uploaded, and hope, like I say, I hope at least one or two people enjoy it. Talk to you. Oh, and I'm going to do a Kylie video tomorrow, hopefully. I do have a doctor's appointment. I don't know how much time I'm going to have, but it'll either be tomorrow or the next day. I'm going to be coming out with a video with the stuff that at least I'm able to release now. So it's not going to be everything, but it'll be. I think you'll find it interesting, though. All right, we'll talk to you either tomorrow or the next day. Catch you.